So you've sent us some really interesting stuff for this deep dive.
Yeah.
We've got the reflections and experiences of Joanne. She's 83 years old.
Wow.
And Matthew Jordan Smith,
Yeah.
who is a 61-year-old photographer
Right.
who has like a global perspective.
Yes.
You know, I think a lot of people are looking for those quick
Yeah.
yet thorough ways of gaining knowledge.
Right.
You want those aha moments.
You want the wisdom
Yeah.
distilled down.
Right. And so we're going to do exactly that today
That's right.
with their insights on self-love, relationships,
Yes.
overcoming fear, and living authentically.
That's right. We've got interview excerpts. We've got pieces of writing that they've done. And it really spans, a lifetime of learning.
Yeah. So Jen's journey really emphasizes this ongoing spiritual exploration, like a deep connection to her inner self. And that seems to be the bedrock for how she approaches self-love and life in general. Now, Matthew's path is shaped by his career in photography.
Yeah.
Moving to different parts of the world and a lot of significant personal experiences, especially in his relationships and his professional life. So we're going to explore both of those and hopefully extract like the core wisdom from these very diverse experiences for you.
Yes, our mission is to extract the gems for you.
That's it. Okay. So let's jump right in to something that is fundamental for both Jan and Matthew.
Okay.
Although they have very different starting points.
Right.
And that is self-love.
Yes.
Jan is very clear on this, especially when we think about, entering into relationships or being in relationships. She really stresses that loving yourself has to come first.
Yeah.
And it's not just like this fleeting feeling for her. It's like this constant awareness of her spiritual core, like her sense of purpose and just this deep respect for herself.
Right.
And she even stresses that this is about being self-sufficient, not selfish.
Right.
Right. And when asked what advice she would give her 25-year-old self, she said something very simple and very direct.
Oh.
Love life.
Love life.
Love yourself. Be your best self.
Powerful.
Yeah. So a key insight right away from Jan is that self-love isn't just about like emotional well-being. For her, it's this foundational spiritual connection that gives her direction and self-respect. It's like an internal compass.
What's so fascinating here is how she roots that self-love
Yeah.
in a really deep understanding of her spiritual identity. It's not just about feeling good. It's tied to a much more profound sense of who she is and what her journey is about. Now, when we shift over and we consider Matthew's reflections, especially as he looks back on his experiences and relationships, we see another angle on the importance of self-love. Although he arrives there through kind of a different route. He very openly regrets prioritizing physical beauty in his earlier relationships. And he really believes that contributed to a lot of the instability he experienced. What he really emphasizes now is this absolute necessity of what he calls real connection. And that real connection is built on shared values. Open communication. Really being on the same page.
Yeah, so I mean, his journey, I think, really illustrates that that initial attraction that's based on something superficial ultimately leads to instability. So for our listener, the real takeaway here is that the values, the shared values, and that open communication is what builds lasting bonds.
That's right.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Jen's conviction that self-love is a prerequisite for healthy relationships really echoes Matthew's later understanding. He kind of had to navigate those experiences that showed him that focusing on the external appearances, status, whatever it might be, wasn't really fulfilling. And he learned through lived experience that that real connection, that deeper alignment, is what really sustains a relationship. So while Jan approaches this from a very internal spiritual grounding, Matthew arrives at a very similar conclusion through the lessons of relationships. So whether the path is inward or outward, this need for a strong sense of self, I think, is a consistent theme here.
Yes, absolutely.
So to kind of build on that idea of relationships, Jan offers some very direct advice, particularly for those who are unmarried. And she says, prioritize loving yourself. It's the foundation. She also underscores the importance of respecting a partner's independence. And reflecting on her own 45-year marriage. She's very candid about how it was a very traditional structure. Her husband was the provider. She did the quote-unquote other work. And she says very clearly, quote, that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, times have changed.
Yeah. So she's highlighting the necessity of balanced partnerships.
Yes.
In today's world. However,
yeah.
and this is an important nuance.
Okay.
She doesn't look back on her marriage with regret.
Oh, wow.
She considers her husband her best teacher and finds immense value.
Yeah.
Even in those more traditional aspects.
That's interesting.
So it kind of prompts a question for our listener.
Yeah.
Can we find these profound learning experiences, even in relationships that might not perfectly align with current societal norms?
Exactly.
Right? She doesn't frame it as a mistake, but as a significant learning process.
Right.
Now contrast that with Matthew.
Okay.
His reflections on relationships are marked by regret.
Oh.
He's very upfront about how that focus on physical beauty led to multiple marriages.
Oh, wow.
And his core realization now centers on that real connection and the absolute need for open communication.
Yeah.
He says very clearly, quote, superficial beauty being the end-all be-all simply isn't as important as he once believed.
Yeah.
You can almost feel the weight of that shift in perspective.
You can feel that he's really learned a lot from that.
Right.
Right? It really does underscore how we as individuals process and learn from our experiences so differently.
Yeah.
You know, Jan is someone who embraces her traditional marriage as this vital part of her life's education.
Right.
She acknowledges the imbalances, but she really values the lessons learned. Whereas Matthew very much expresses regret over his past choices, recognizing a pattern of prioritizing superficiality.
Yeah, and yet, despite these differing paths and perspectives, their insights converge on that critical role of genuine connection in relationships.
Yeah.
And I think whether it originates from a strong sense of self-love, as John advocates, or a hard-earned understanding of what truly makes a partnership last, as in Matthew's case.
Right.
That deep connection is presented as essential.
That's right.
So it makes you think about your own relationships.
It does.
What foundation are they built upon?
Yeah, what are you prioritizing?
Now, shifting gears a little bit
Okay.
to overcoming fear.
Okay.
Jan offers a really interesting perspective that I think ties into this idea of, our inner lives. She believes that a lot of us suppress our deeper longings, those inner urges, because of fear of the unknown.
Fear of the unknown. Yeah. That can be so scary.
Right. And so instead of confronting these feelings, we often seek out temporary escapes, temporary distractions.
Yeah.
And so for her, quote, waking up is about becoming truly aware of your authentic self.
Yes.
And overcoming fear is a natural and necessary part of that awakening.
Yeah.
She even asks quite directly, it's fear. Don't you fear the unknown?
It's so true.
Right. And her own journey out of depression.
Wow.
Involved a significant release of that fear, leading to a feeling of incredible freedom.
Amazing.
And what's interesting is this transformation followed 40 years.
40 years.
Of working with a counselor.
Wow.
Which I think is a real testament to the power of that inner work.
It's a process.
Right? So her experience suggests that the fears that are holding us back might be rooted in a reluctance to confront our own inner landscape.
That makes sense.
Right.
What I think is so insightful about Jan is that she really emphasizes those internal barriers that fear erects, preventing us from really connecting with our true desires, embarking on deeper self-discovery. Now, Matthew's perspective on overcoming fear takes more of an external focus, but it's equally impactful.
Okay.
His advice to his 25-year-old self is incredibly clear.
Okay.
Quote, to not be afraid.
To not be afraid.
Of what other people think.
Wow.
He believes that fear held him back significantly, and that living without that concern would have led to a much more fulfilling life.
So he's not saying to be rude.
No.
Or to not care at all.
No, just to not let it control you.
Yeah, to not let that fear control you. I mean, he had this realization that in the grand scheme of things, quote, nobody really cares about you.
Right.
And it was actually very liberating.
Interesting.
Because it empowered him to live more authentically for himself. So his decision to move to Japan at 52,
wow,
which a lot of people thought was crazy, was a direct manifestation of that.
Oh, wow.
Of him choosing to live according to his own inner compass, rather than societal expectations.
Right.
So while Jan points to the fear of the unknown within, Matthew highlights those shackles of fearing external judgment.
Yeah, so two different kinds of fear.
Right.
But they're both powerful.
And both ultimately lead to, not being able to live a fully authentic life.
Yeah. And, it's fascinating how both of these perspectives, although they're focusing on different sources of that fear, converge on the same idea.
Right.
Overcoming fear is vital to living a more authentic life and to pursuing those deeper longings.
Right.
Whether they originate from within, like Jan's experience, or personal aspirations that are unburdened by external pressures like Matthew.
Yeah.
It seems like the ability to move beyond that fear is key.
It's essential. And I think for the listener, it's, it prompts that reflection of what fears, internal or external, might be holding you back from something really significant.
Exactly. And that kind of brings us to
yes,
living authentically and cultivating self-awareness.
Right. So Jan's advice for anyone who's feeling this sense of dissatisfaction in their life is deeply introspective. She says, quote, "Go inside yourself. Find somebody that can help you as a counselor. Ask deeper questions. Learn to listen." So she really emphasizes this inner journey, this process of understanding yourself as something more than just the ego.
More than the ego.
A spiritual being with inherent worth.
Yeah.
And again, that realization that it doesn't matter what people think of you.
Doesn't matter.
Is presented as this key.
A key.
To unlocking freedom.
That freedom.
Right.
So powerful.
And she even reframes life's challenges.
Oh.
Not as mistakes, but as these valuable learning experiences.
I love that perspective.
Right. So her path to authentic living is really paved with this inner reflection.
Right.
And a detachment from external validation.
Yeah, not needing that external validation.
Right.
So Matthew really echoes this call for inner work.
Yeah.
He stresses the importance of discovering what is truly important to you early in life. And being totally open to self-discovery.
I think it's much harder to do that when you're younger.
It is. It's easier said than done.
It is, but he did have this, profound loss in his family. And that really solidified his belief that living for oneself and one's deepest convictions is absolutely essential.
Well, put things in perspective.
Right. And so his move to Japan was, in his words, a choice to live for his soul's calling.
I love that.
And what's interesting, too, is that his priorities have shifted over time.
Okay.
From primarily financial goals to more valuing experiences and personal growth.
That's the shift.
Yeah, so it really does show that, authentic living often involves this evolution of values.
Yes, it's not static.
Right.
It changes.
Right. So the common ground here, I think, is truly striking.
Yeah.
Both Jan and Matthew underscore the need to look inward. To engage in that self-reflection.
Yes.
And to prioritize those values over external pressures.
It's so easy to get caught up in what other people think or what society expects. But Jan and Matthew are really saying, you gotta look inside.
Yeah. Jan frames it through that spiritual lens, whereas Matthew's more about personal fulfillment and learning from these tests in life.
Right.
But ultimately, the message is the same.
Yes.
Know yourself, understand what resonates with you, and live in alignment with that knowledge.
It's about being authentic.
Yes. Now let's talk a little bit about career and passion.
Okay.
Because Matthew's experience here is really insightful.
Okay.
He speaks so passionately about loving the craft of photography right from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Even when he was a photo assistant.
Yeah.
Living very frugally.
Wow.
And he believes that that love for the actual work, not the fame or the money, is what sustains a long and fulfilling career. And his advice to aspiring photographers is really simple.
Okay.
Love the process.
Love it.
And be patient.
It takes time.
So it really highlights that intrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
Now, Jan's reflections on her understanding of goals offers kind of a contrast to that.
Okay.
She admits that in her younger years, her goals were shaped by, societal norms.
Yeah.
But now her goal has shifted to a much more internal state of being.
Okay.
To be present.
Present.
Aware alert.
Aware alert. I love that.
So it's really an evolution.
Yeah.
from external achievements to an internal state of mindfulness.
Right.
What matters most.
Right. So Matthew gives very grounded, practical advice on building a career based on that genuine passion. Jan's reflection is more about the evolution of her understanding of what constitutes a meaningful goal.
That makes sense.
Moving away from those external markers of success to a more internal focus. So both are valuable, but they're very different.
So as we begin to synthesize all of this, these really rich insights, I think there's some key overarching themes that emerge from both their experiences. And the first is this consistent emphasis on the vital importance of self-awareness.
Self-awareness.
You know, truly understanding who you are at your core.
Yeah.
And what really matters.
What matters to you.
To you.
Not anybody else.
And then this need to confront and overcome fear.
Right.
Whether that fear comes from, you know, our own uncertainties or the judgments of the external world.
Or the judgments of the external world.
That's a central thread.
It's a big one.
It is. And then both in their own unique ways.
Yeah.
Advocate for the courage to live authentically in alignment with your true self.
Yeah.
Rather than being dictated by,
right,
you know, those external pressures or expectations. And then, of course, this multifaceted nature of love, self-love as a foundation.
Yeah. Right.
The complexities of love and relationships.
Yeah.
And even the love for one's chosen work. I think that serves as this recurring motif throughout their reflections.
So it's all connected.
Right. And I think what makes this so valuable for our listener is how Jan's spiritual perspective and Matthew's wisdom gleaned from these life experiences offer these complementary ways of understanding these fundamental aspects of the human experience.
So for you, our listener, what are the key takeaways from this deep dive into the wisdom of Jan and Matthew?
Well, from Jan, I think we gain this profound appreciation for the significance of looking inward, you know, connecting with that deeper sense of self, maybe even a spiritual identity as that bedrock for how we cultivate self-love and how we navigate, you know, these inevitable complexities of life.
Right.
Her journey underscores that transformative power of overcoming that fear of the unknown within ourselves and releasing that need for external validation, which can lead to a greater sense of inner freedom.
And Matthew's life story really powerfully illustrates the importance of living authentically, even when it means stepping outside of those conventional expectations. His reflections on past relationships are such a potent reminder of the enduring value of genuine connection over that superficiality.
And his career trajectory demonstrates that a deep passion for one's craft can really fuel long-term fulfillment and success.
And both of them show that life is an ongoing journey of learning and growth.
It's not a destination.
And that our challenges can be our greatest teachers, guiding us to a more authentic and meaningful life.
This brings us to a final point for you to consider. So reflecting on Jan's emphasis on understanding your spiritual self and Matthew's journey of self-discovery. What inner urge might you be suppressing due to a fear of the unknown?
What's that thing that's nagging at you that you're afraid to explore?
Wait, what's that small concrete step that you can take today to explore it further?
Or think about this. Jan talks about that freedom of realizing that other people's opinions don't matter. And Matthew talks about this need to live authentically for himself. So think about a situation in your life where you might be prioritizing other people's expectations over your own inner voice.
Over what you really want.
And what would it look like to just subtly shift that balance even a little bit?
That's a great question to reflect on.
It is.
And I think ultimately, you know, this deep dive into their experiences is just a starting point. But hopefully it sparks that internal exploration for you.
That's what we hope for.
And encourages you to delve deeper into what holds significance for you.
In your life.
In your life.
Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
If you like the podcast, make sure you subscribe for the next session.